life. How do people get better?
With a body as complex as it is, you need to have a multidimensional approach. So doing all that stuff, finding something that relaxes you, putting in the probiotics, looking at food and how you deal and react with stress are all things that I do in my clinic to help people out, because you just can't do one thing and have it affect every other aspect that you have.
So speaking of in your clinic, what people come in for, and specifically as it relates to marijuana, what other conditions do you see that people are using marijuana successfully for?
Glaucoma, hepatitis C, because some people have flare-ups with that. Chronic pain, we have a lot of people that helps out with. We have people who have multiple sclerosis where that's helping them out. Wasting syndrome, where people just aren't eating. It's been helping with the side effects for chemo and radiation, for the people to be able to have the energy to recover from it. I mean, there's just this whole world, a gamut. Migraine headaches, it's been helping with that. Even tension headaches. There's just a lot of benefit that I've seen in the last 5 years since we've had this medical marijuana process in place that has really helped out.
And what do you think about using marijuana for cancer? We hear a lot about, and it's Breast Cancer Month, so I thought I'd ask you that question. And I know there's a lot of people who use tinctures to control or help even cure, if I can say that, breast cancer. Do you have patients and do you see them using it successfully?
Yeah, so actually the word cure is so, final. We try not to use that word, but it has definitely helped a lot of people out, either with the side effects or being able to decrease the size of tumors. But they're also doing this in conjunction with their standard chemo, radiation, or even adjunct therapies as well, because we do a lot of education as far as nutrition goes, intravenous nutrients that they can get along with the marijuana. But between the combination of everything, we've definitely seen improvement with a lot of the cancer patients.
So we have a little time left, but I was wondering, do you use marijuana?
I do not. My medical condition that I have is not at the point where it warrants it, but I definitely have seen the benefits of it for a lot of people. I've actually had a lot of my patients ask me, will you use it? I'm like, no. They're like, why not? And I'm like, well, because, one, I can't really use it, since I don't have my card, because my medical condition, yes, would be on there, but I've been able to manage it so well that I don't have to be on it at this point. But you never know, in the future, I may need to, so if anything else comes up. So, of course, it's never ruled out.
Gotcha. In conditions like IBS, one of the things I really worry about is as I get older that it might get worse. Do you see these digestive problems getting worse, or are people able to maybe realize they have this disease, take some control over it, and it gets maybe more stable over time? Or does it degenerate over time?
Well, here again, it depends. Sometimes if I'm really able to connect with my patient, be able to make some lifestyle changes, they can maintain, or they can be in remission for years. So for those that still have the heavy stress and they don't have the lifestyle change and do what they need to do, it can be, maintained for a bit, but then they're going to get the flare-ups. So it really depends on each person, on what they do and how invested they are in their health, what exactly the body's going to react to.
So people who are not in states where marijuana therapy is legal, what would you suggest they do to control? I know that I've gone on steroids to control flare-ups, but that has a whole host of other problems. What do you think the main thing is for people to do?
Here again, they have to look at stress. How do they handle stressors? There are herbs out there like glycine, which is an amino acid, to help rebuild the gut lining. You've got HMF forte, which is biceroyal, which has actually been shown to help reduce IBS inflammation. It is kind of like a super probiotic. That here again, looking at diet, do you have enough fiber, or do you need to cut back on the fiber? What inflammatory foods do you have? And that you have to look at. Sometimes there needs to be an elimination rotation diet. You may need to take glucose out of the diet. I've seen a lot of patients who are actually sensitive to glucose, yet the food allergy testing doesn't say otherwise. It says that they have no gluten sensitivity. So those are some things that we have to look at. Is your coffee dehydrating you enough to cause more inflammation? So we may need to switch them over to green tea, which is actually probably a little bit better than coffee because of the antibiotic aspect that's in it. And also there's a whole bunch of anti-inflammatory herbs that can be used. One of the ones I really like is called Ebrogas. It's from Europe, and that one is specifically formulated to help calm down inflammation in the gut. And so that one's a really good too. So there's all sorts of stuff that we can do as naturopaths to really help with that.
Well, it's great information, and we are out of time. I thank you so much for walking us through this today, Dr. Burns. And I wanted to thank everybody for joining us on Just Say No. We'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Jennifer Burns, and our producer for finding these great guests and making this show possible. You can download episodes of our program by going to cannabisradio.com or subscribing to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio. You can follow the show on Facebook or Google+. For more information about our guests and to read more about patients using marijuana to control their symptoms, and also to talk to me, you can go to mjwellness.com. And you can find Dr. Burns at Benitre Center, and that's TheBienetre Center.com. And join us next week when we'll tackle more conditions that can be managed using marijuana therapy.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast or redistribution without proper consent of CannabisRadio.com is prohibited. Forwarding the cause of legalization and research of the growing cannabis industry, one podcast at a time. The Cannabis Radio Network.
BBC News with Jonathan Izard. France has said it's more likely than not that the Russian airline disaster in Egypt was caused by a bomb. France has advised against travelling to the Egyptian resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, where the accident happened, and Dutch and German airlines have suspended flights there. But Russia and Egypt have called for caution, and Moscow criticised Britain for not sharing the intelligence on which it based its decisions. Figures released by the European Union reveal that officials are assuming that up to 3 million migrants may arrive in the EU by the end of 2017. In a separate report, the UN Refugee Agency said it expected people to continue arriving in Greece from Turkey at a rate of 5,000 a day. Mafia bosses, politicians and businessmen have appeared in court in Rome at the start of Italy's biggest anti-corruption trial for decades. They're accused of rigging contracts for public services over many years, actions that have brought the Italian capital's finances close to the point of collapse. Doctors in Britain have for the first time used a pioneering form of gene therapy to cure a previously irreversible cancer. They altered the DNA inside a donor's immune cells to create for the patient a system that can hunt and kill the leukemia cells. France is to send its largest warship, the aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, to support operations against Islamic State militants and other jihadists in Syria. Paris said the vessel would shorten the time it takes French jets to carry out airstrikes. The charity Médecins Sans Frontières says its staff saw people being shot from the air as they tried to flee a hospital in Afghanistan that was hit by US airstrikes a month ago. In a review of the incident in Kunduz, MSF said its own personnel were hit while trying to reach safety. International and local human rights groups have called on the Angolan government to release 15 activists, including a popular rap artist, who have been in detention since June. They've been accused of preparing acts of rebellion and plotting against the president. That's the latest BBC World Service News.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. British Prime Minister David Cameron has defended the suspension of UK flights in and out of Sharm el-Sheikh after talks in London with Egypt's president. Mr. Cameron and President Fattah al-Sisi discussed security at the airport in Sharm el-Sheikh after the UK claimed a bomb may have brought down a flight on its way to Russia over the weekend. UK correspondent Ollie Barrett reports.
David Cameron says the suspension of flights ordered by his government is vital and warned it may be some time before some British tourists can get home. He says it's increasingly likely a terrorist bomb caused the crash of a Russian passenger plane on Saturday with 224 on board. President Sisi, after talks at Downing Street, expressed complete understanding of the British position, but also insisted security at Egyptian airports was tightened 10 months ago at London's request and found to be good enough. Russia's described Britain's suggestions of a bomb on board the crashed jet as speculation. British Airlines say they'll start operating rescue flights from Sharm el-Sheikh on Friday for stranded UK tourists. Ollie Barrett, London.
The European Union says it expects some 3 million refugees and migrants to arrive in Europe by 2017. The predictions are continually being raised as the EU sees huge flows of people seeking sanctuary from war and conflict in countries like Syria, Iraq, and across sub-Saharan Africa. Our Europe correspondent Jack Perrock has more.
The European Commission says the 3 million people set to arrive in the EU would increase the 28-member bloc's population by around 0.4%. The UN says 5,000 people per day will continue to cross the sea from Turkey into Greece, even as the winter months set in, making the journey more treacherous. Despite the EU's Finance Commissioner, Pierre Moscovici, saying the influx could provide a boost to EU economies, many are concerned about the social and cultural ramifications of such large arrivals.
The U.S. Congress is starting months of debate over whether to endorse the recently agreed-upon Trans-Pacific Partnership. The deal, which includes 12 countries accounting for 40% of the global economy, needs to be ratified by American lawmakers. Here's our U.S. correspondent Nick Harper.
The agreement last month made history, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, becoming the largest regional trade agreement of all time. It aims to bring an end to trade barriers between 12 Pacific Rim nations. The White House argues it will boost the U.S. economy. But with the release of the final details, Congress must now digest and debate the deal before voting on it in the spring. Among the newly released details is the fact Vietnam's government has agreed to American proposals which could see reforms to the Asian country's working conditions and labour rights.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Former U.S. President George Herbert Walker Bush is accusing some senior Republican figures of betraying the White House during the presidency of his son, George W. Bush. In a new biography, the first President Bush is witheringly critical of former Vice President Dick Cheney and former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. From Washington, Simon Marks reports.
For years, the first President Bush has offered little commentary on his son's presidency. Now he's told a biographer that former Vice President Dick Cheney became very hardline and built his own empire during George W. Bush's presidency. Donald Rumsfeld is described as arrogant, displaying swagger and a lack of humility. The claims are being published just as the president's other son, Jeb, is trying to win the Republican Party's nomination, a task the book may only complicate. Simon Marks, Washington.
And the gender wage gap exists in all sectors of work in the United States, according to a new study by PayScale, Inc. The data shows that married men earn the highest salaries and single mothers earn the lowest. Mary McCarthy has that story.
The new study shows that fathers in the U.S. earn the highest overall median salaries, over $67,000 annually. Married mothers make a median salary of $20,000 less than that, and single mothers lag significantly behind at $38,000. The trajectory of salaries is also significantly different for men and women. Men's salaries generally increase until past the age of 50, whereas women's salaries tend to plateau by the age of 40. Interestingly, education does not help alleviate the gender wage gap in the U.S. The study shows that the highest pay disparity is among people with PhDs, MBAs, and medical degrees. In Denver, I'm Mary McCarthy.
And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Rebecca Foster reporting.